Hello and welcome to the Film Ireland podcast. I'm June Butler and I'll be talking to directors Garry Keane and Andrew McConnell about their documentary Gaza, which is currently screening in Irish cinemas. Thanks a million for coming to see me. Really great.
Not a bother at all.
I know how busy you are. It was released at Sundance and it went very well, I hear.
It was incredible. I mean, we had 6 screenings back to back. 2,500 people-ish went to see it in that amount of time. And it was phenomenal because Sundance is a festival, you know, it's our first time there, obviously. But we weren't prepared, I think, for the attention that a film gets when it goes to Sundance and the care that they give it and the appreciation they have for it and the level of awareness they have about what you're trying to say and how you're trying to say it and cinema language and everything. I mean, it was just phenomenally interesting and educational and emotional and uplifting and all of those things wrapped up in one. It was an incredible experience.
And how long did the screenings run for? Was it
one after the other? Yeah, for 6 nights.
For 6 nights, yeah. So there was a lot of people saw it, and obviously the impact on people was huge.
Yeah, you really sensed that as an American audience, they had never been exposed to this before. They'd never seen this side of Gaza, and they had if they knew what Gaza was, they had one perspective, and that was that this is just a place that is full of people who've been demonized and is just mostly rubble. And so people would come up to us afterwards and say, I had no idea Gaza was like that. And we had Jewish Americans come up to us and say, thank you for making this film. It's important to show this side of the story. So that was really uplifting. And I think one of the best screenings we had was to a group of high school children.
What nationality were they?
Oh, they were all Americans from the state of Utah, and incredibly engaged. I think at the end we had a Q&A, and the moderator put the questions out to the audience, and about 200 hands shot up. And we spoke to one of the teachers later on in the week and said that the children had been talking about it all week. They'd been doing projects in class about it. And it really had stimulated an interest in the situation. So, I mean, that's exactly what you want to do.
Do you know what it did as well? Is, when you get immersed in a film and you have an idea and a concept as to what way you're going to tackle it and what way you're going to tell the story, and you don't know, you're in it, so you can't see the wood for the trees, and you have to rely on your own instincts and your own abilities and your own experience to get you through it to the other end. But it kind of reaffirmed it immediately that all the conversations myself and Andrew have had since 2012 about making this film. What it did was it reaffirmed in my head and in Andrew's as well, I think that we made the right choices.
Yes. That
the perspective we took and the decisions we made were having an impact, and they were having the right type of impact because the right questions were coming back at us. The right the right feeling was coming back at us. When you have 15 and 17-year-old American children saying to you in a room, are we implicit in this thing that's happening, this horribleness that's happening in Gaza? Is our government involved in this? Should we do something? Can we do something? We don't want to be involved in this. It was uplifting. I don't know what impact it will have going forward, but it was just nice to be in a room full of the next generation of Americans and hope against hope that they will change things for the better and take things, pull them back from the right,
But just to kind of bring you back to the concept and when you started thinking about this, obviously this is something that is, I've watched the movie very carefully, and to me it absolutely speaks of integrity, and it's telling the truth. I see truth in every single frame that I've seen, and I was moved. I watched it last night and I was moved to tears, and beautifully shot. It's just visually engaging, which is, I'm sure I know this is what you want it to be, which you want people to engage with it and then to pass the message on, to give this message out there and to keep it going. When you first thought of what you were going to do, when did that concept occur? Was there, obviously there was many conversations I'm sure about it, but when did did you think of it first?
Well, the whole idea was born out of a series of pictures I did on the surfers back in 2010-11, because I'm originally a photographer, and Garry and I met in 2012, And we started discussing Gaza then, and we both were really passionate about the idea of creating something that hadn't never been done before in Gaza, to show this place from a perspective that people hadn't seen it from before. So from the very beginning, those talks they evolved around let's point the cameras away from these politicians, from groups like Hamas, from all of that, which we're all familiar with, and let's just point it towards the people and let them talk about their own situation. And in doing that, that's just a very simple thing to do, but in doing that, you change the dynamic completely.
Yeah, she did. I noticed that throughout the movie, that there was no judgment or no political statement or nothing. It was literally let the people tell their story, because you can't replace the truth.
No, as soon as you start giving a voice to Hamas or to the other side or to anyone, then you're you're angling the film from one direction or another. And then there's bias comes into it, and agendas, and we just wanted to avoid all that, because that's been done so often.
Pictorially, it's an amazing piece of journalism. It's just so honest and so vibrant. And
no, I mean, what Andrew brought to it visually was remarkable because of Andrew's. Sometimes you think that you have to be trained in a certain discipline, in order to do it properly or do it well. But disciplines can intermingle, disciplines can overlap, and even though Andrew hadn't filmed anything before, he'd spent his entire career taking photographs and shooting a film. There's a small little step you have to take between the two, But from experience point of view, what Andrew had from his 20 years experience in the field was that ability to put himself into situations that other people might not want to put themselves into, and to keep the camera running for longer than other people might want to keep it running, and have that sensibility about it. And ironically, for the most part, the film has gotten great press, but we have been, on occasions, especially from the American press, held accountable as a result of the film looking too nice and being too stylized. And I don't understand that, to be honest, because one of the kind of things that we went into to do, and one of the notions that we expressed hugely to our contributors, was that we felt that they deserved the same type of cinematic treatment as anybody else, and why wouldn't they? And I think, this sort of a notion that reality only exists if you create handheld, dirty images that feel real, this cinema verite, it's missing the point. It's missing the point about showing these Gazan people as they should be shown. Why do they not deserve a cinematic treatment? Why do they not deserve to look well on the screen and to be framed properly and to be composed properly, and the camera to be steady and linger? So yeah, I think it's interesting. You look at the feedback we've been getting has been phenomenally good for the most part, but you kind of think that some people just slightly miss the point about it's not a film that me and Andrew set out to make as a film, as a statement for what we can do. It's a film that we set out to make to raise awareness about a situation that's intolerable and inhumane, and we just decided to do it in this particular way because we felt it deserved that sort of treatment.
I agree. I loved there was a gorgeous shots at the beginning, particularly the boys running along the beach, and there was a beautiful shadowy images, I think, towards the end of the same group of boys on the beach. I think they were kind of in you couldn't see them.
Silhouette.
They were in silhouette. They were just
they were
jumping.
dancing
on the beach. Yeah. They're happy kids,
I just thought that was
they're happy bunch.
I mean, they were a great bunch of really tight-knit brothers who obviously adored each other, and that was their unit. And but that speaks to a larger idea that, I mean, within somewhere like Gaza, you don't survive as an individual. You must be part of a group. That's how you survive, and that's why the families are such tight-knit units there, and have been for eons past. I mean, the family unit within the Middle East is how you survive. So, you can see that within them they are a band of brothers, and they do everything together, go everywhere together.
I loved it, and I loved the camaraderie between them. What I also liked as well is that throughout the film, in every single instance, particularly amongst the men, which I loved, the fact that they were so tactile with each other. Like they kissed each other, they hugged each other, like they kissed each other on the cheek. But it was a greeting that they had given. It's a common greeting. It's not. There's nothing untoward.
Oh no, you have to learn to do that
absolutely.
Quite quickly in Gaza.
Yes, but I love that. I think that is absolutely amazing. I think it's wonderful because they show their emotions, and the fact that they're not afraid. They see each other. They cry. You know, that is something I think that they realise in the trauma of what they're going through, that this is tangible and real and belongs to them. So that emotion is theirs and that they can express it. So that if other things are out of their control, that this is something that they own.
They're incredibly honest people. I mean, you find when you work in Gaza that you develop friendships very, very quickly. They accept you very quickly. It becomes like a very personal thing very quickly. You know, they wear their heart on their sleeves. You take them as you find them. They expose themselves to you openly. They let you into their hearts and minds and homes. It's hard to actually work in Gaza for the amount of requests you have to go and eat and drink and talk to people, and literally being stopped on the street to do so. You know, strangers going, welcome, welcome. You're walking down the street and you have 10 welcomes in 5 minutes. You know, and when they hear we're Irish, it actually adds a new dimension to it, because they do know about Ireland, and they do have this real strong feeling that of all the countries in Europe, Ireland is they have solidarity with Ireland, because they feel that Ireland is the one country that really expresses its pro-Palestinian stance. So it's a beautiful place. Like myself and Andy were just talking earlier. I mean, if somebody asked a pair of us, where would you like to go tomorrow morning on holidays, and pick anywhere, two of us would go to Gaza.
You shot it over 4 years, because I noticed that Ahmed at the end looked older, and he'd lost that kind of, you know, the really skinny little boy. He was a skinny little boy when he was first shot. It's a long time. So did you have to make obviously you made multiple trips back and forward?
Yeah, we first went in 2014, and that's when I met Ahmed. As a little kid, I saw him out at sea. He was a little speck on a little raft, about a kilometre out to sea, and I stood there on the shore and waited for him to come in. And he landed on the shore, and all of a sudden these brothers appeared from everywhere, and this bunch of kids running around, and I just looked at them and thought, this is a very interesting face and a very interesting little character. He had presence even then, and then so we filmed him over the years. We went back in 2016, we met further characters, and our last trip was 2018, and so that's when he had grown.
Yeah, I could see that.
Quite a lot in that space of time.
Did you think, I thought he looked slightly and understandably more world weary at that stage?
Of course, I mean,
he's been, how many wars were?
Yeah, 3 at least in his short life stage. But we you know, and that's his narrative. His narrative starts off with him talking to us about having this dream to be a big boat captain and go to sea. And the whole motivation for that is literally to be able to feed his family and his extended family, and his whole narrative to bring him back full circle at the end and show him as an 18-year-old standing at the protests in despair with bullets going over his head. It's just that sense of the dream is hollow. Unfortunately, he'll never get to be what he wants to be and to do what he wants to do. And that last shot of him as a teenager heading off into no man's land, into a place that could be anywhere or nowhere, was the image that stuck in our head as being definitely the last image of the film, because it's just that little boy who had all these dreams, and where are they going?
Yeah, absolutely. And then there was the Bakir family, where they lost, I believe, in one rocket strike, they lost, was it 3 or 4 children? And the son had gone, and a few cousins, I think it was, had gone beyond the 3-mile parameter of fishing and was taken by the Israeli gunboats.
That's
and
right.
The son went to prison for 2 years.
Yes. And so, yeah, you find that happens quite a lot. I mean, fishermen also lose their lives at sea.
And they spray them with feces.
Yeah, sometimes that happens too.
It's inhumane.
Everything is inhumane in
It's
regard to the
absolutely-
treatment of the people of
It's
Gaza.
appalling. I knew it was bad, but I had no idea. It absolutely is a story that needs to be told. But what I thought was most the Bakir family, when they lost their 4 children, that the father was so stoic, and that he was literally he instead of railing and ranting, which he could have done in the circumstances, he chose to pray. And there's a lovely shot of him on the roof praying, and obviously lost in his own thoughts and his own grief shortly after the occurrence. But then the son, when he came back from prison, that the welcome that he got was quite amazing.
Yeah, you see guns being fired, you see the whole parade, and one of the militant groups turns up, the PFLP, a convoy, and it's quite an event. I mean, as a returning prisoner from Israel is given a hero's welcome, and you see that. I mean, but you see also allegiances to certain groups playing out there, and so that's a part of daily life. I mean, big families like the Bakir family will be aligned to certain groups. Those allegiances will change and shift, and maybe they'll combine. So there you had the PFLP come along and wave all those red flags, but that's a part of the dynamic on the ground there. But yeah, certainly it was a hero's welcome for him.
Yeah. And tell me, when you obviously you first met Ahmed, but how did you meet the other? Like, was there links? They seem to know of each other. There seemed to be. I noticed there was a thread running through.
Yeah, we wanted to kind of, in some small way, kind of show that it's such a small place. You know what I mean? It's only 27 miles by whatever, 6 or 7. And the casting process was an ongoing, very, very long process that happened continuously over 4 years. I mean, when Andrew was in there, he did some casting. When we were back here, we had a great fixer, Fadi, over on the ground, who we throw suggestions at, and he really understood what we were looking for and would throw suggestions back. I met such and such, would you be interested in such and such? And he'd do little pieces with them, or he'd show, take photographs of them. And so it was a real kind of a process that we went through. But we always knew from day one that we were going to make a film that had a tapestry of characters, young, old, male, female, from all different walks of life, because we felt that in order to tell the story of Gaza, which is a very simple title that we put on the film, it's just Gaza, that needed to be a broad spectrum of cross-section of everyone that lived on the strip, insofar as we could do that within the confines of 90 minutes. But so we shot with a lot more people than when actually made it into the film, but we always had to stick to that initial notion that we had, which was that we wanted a large cast, which wasn't easy, you know what I mean, because you can't go in and recce. You can't go, it's not like going down to Galway to find a few characters for a couple of days, you know what I mean. So we had to rely on help on the ground in there. And then when we were in there in 15 and 18, we did an awful lot of work on the ground, as well as filming with the people that we prepared to film with. We were always on the lookout for characters, all the time. So it was a gradual build-up over 4 years. And I suppose, even though it was frustrating that it took us that long to make it, primarily because of funding difficulties, in hindsight, it wasn't probably a bad thing, because it allowed us that time to really develop relationships and find the right people and get the whole sense of the film into our heads to go into the edit.
There's I love the concept of travel in the film. There's a lot of and it seems like as a viewer, to me it looked like though the film started off with a concept of space, even though there wasn't, and that it gradually moved closer and closer to the middle, which was ultimately short, sharp shocks of massive violence and people getting injured and killed, and it became tighter and tighter as the film, and so it started off slowly but reached this culmination at the end, which I thought was a really good concept, because it gave people time to grasp the seriousness of it and the tragedy of this. And to me, I look now and I would say this is not just an oppression. This looks to me like it's genocide, that it's attempted genocide, that they're trying to strangle the people. I don't know what the purpose is, at this point of keeping these people so utterly oppressed, because they've embedded like political factions into the populace, and it means that these people are going to be more likely to not agree to anything. And it just looks to me like as though there's an attempt to kill off the population, that they're denying them medicines, they're denying them contact, they're denying them everything. And I mean, what about mental illness? What about post-traumatic stress disorder? Every single person there must suffer from that. It's to some degree or another. There's no treatment for anybody there. So there's probably people untreated, huge amount of mental illness in Gaza that nobody even talks about, or how could they?
Well, there's a huge amount of trauma, there's no doubt about it. And yeah, there's very few psychologists inside Gaza. I mean, the way the film sort of develops in a sense that we try to follow sort of what life is like for the average person in Gaza. You know, we open and it is quite... It's comfortable to begin with. I mean, you see people living out their lives in sort of... in ways that are quite normal. There's nothing untoward that really appears at the beginning when we see little Ackman dreaming of being a fisherman.
The huge, great big trousers on him, God bless him. Like they nearly go to his neck. It's just this huge pair of trousers, like the kind of the sou'wester trousers. Oh, God bless
I know,
him.
and he's so thin. I mean, you can see that he's malnourished, and they all are. But because they live in a refugee camp, and very often, as he says himself, you know, some days we eat nothing but salt. The sea gives them almost nothing. I mean, that family is unique. That's not the norm. It's important to point out. I mean, even though there's 40 children, the father has 40 children. I mean, he has 3 wives. That is not the norm in Gaza. There are big families, but mostly it's in around.
He did mention that he thought he had the largest family in Gaza.
Yeah. But no, in terms of everybody, you know, we're just introduced to them in a sort of a quiet way. But what it's important to drive home is that these people live under the constant threat of a looming war. And that psychological pressure is huge. And none of us can really imagine it, what it must be like. I mean, I covered the war in 2014, but then I'm able to leave, you know, and I'm able to go out somewhere else and travel, take a holiday. That is unimaginable to me, because I know it was tough enough just covering that and then going away. I mean, I remember coming home back to Enniskillen and spending some time in Donegal and visiting the coast and just sort of decompressing after that. None of the Gazans were able to do that. They stayed inside Gaza, cleaned up the remains of their homes, tried to put some sort of semblance of a life back together. If they'd lost loved ones, they had to also grieve at the same time. And then they had to get on with it, but deal with the fact that this could happen again quite quickly. And there has been a lot of escalations since then. I mean, earlier this year it looked like they were on the brink of war. It was very, very close to war again. It's quite remarkable that they stepped back from it, actually, both sides. And it's encouraging that they did. But to get back to the sort of overall narrative arc, we see that in the film, and we see that pressure build throughout, because the pressure is always there. It is a pressure cooker. And at the end, yes, it comes, and you see what it's like to live under bombardment.
It was, what do you hope is the legacy of this movie? What would you like?
I mean, all we hope for is to get people to watch it, and to for the first time, we think we've created a piece of work that is unique from the perspective that we told it from, you know, that allows the voiceless people of Gaza talk and let them drive their own narrative. I mean, we didn't get involved. There's no voiceover in the film. We didn't involve ourselves in the editorial, you know, and never would have for a second. But we would just hope that people come away with a complete, fresh, new understanding of what Gaza is and what it's trying to be, and, you know, that it creates an empathy that wouldn't be there by watching 30-second news footage of, you know, here's another, you know, conflict after breaking out in Gaza, and everyone becomes so desensitized to it because it's on recurring news and it's shown 4 times a day, but people pass it and move on to the next thing. We hope that by allowing people sit there and watch this narrative unfold for an hour and a half and really start feeling that these people are just like us. All they want to do is have the simple. That's all. I mean, it's not a big ask. It shouldn't be in this day and age a big ask. They're not looking for any privileges. They're not looking for any special attention. They're not looking for. They're not actually even looking for attention per se at all, apart from the attention they need for people to actually realise that something has to be done very, very quickly to get them out of the situation they're in, because they feel incredibly let down by everybody, by politics internally, externally, and by the international community at large, because there just doesn't seem to be a will on any side to change this. And that's the frightening thing about it, you know. If there was a will, we know ourselves in the context of Northern Ireland, like, you know, by the time they actually, you know, it took a long time, but when they actually sat around and decided they wanted to fix things, they fixed it very quickly. And that's possible in Gaza. That could happen in the morning. If the vested interests in Gaza got around a table and trashed out a deal, the borders could be open in the morning, and it wouldn't be what is, you know, popular promotion in terms of the Israeli media machine, that there'd be chaos raining down on Gaza, on Israel. There was a time when the borders were open and half of Gaza went in and out of Israel and worked and came home in the evening, and it was a normal situation. So, you know, this notion that Gaza is a terrorist enclave, and that if they open the borders, all hell will break loose, is a complete fabrication.
It's very easy to create it to define it as this type of.
It's a created
entity.
story. It's a created, fabricated story that has no basis.
Once you have control over media, and once you have control over most media, because there's very few people who would have actually gone in and done what you did.
Well, there's a concerted effort to control it to such a degree that they don't want films like ours to be made. You know. Did
you find any difficulties when you were making the film? Did you find any untoward attention, or were you able to access Gaza easily enough? Or
look, you go through the normal protocol in terms of getting in and out, you know. But you know, we didn't have to point out exactly what we were doing or how we were doing it. We didn't hand them the script, you know.
Exactly.
But you know, I don't think it's something that they would want. They don't want people to look at the people of Gaza as being human, because the whole process is a dehumanizing one, and that serves purposes to keep it that way. So,
I read a book once called. It's The Tipping Point by Malcolm Gladwell. I don't know if you've heard of it. Basically, Gladwell's book is about how little things can make a big difference, or seeming little things can make a big difference, and that the law of the few is dependent on the involvement of people with a rare set of social gifts. And then those three sets of social gifts are connectors. So connectors would be people who know large numbers of people. And then the next one is the maven, who'd be info specialists, and they accumulate knowledge and know how to share it. And finally, it's salesmen, who are persuaders, charismatic people with powerful negotiation skills. I look at that movie and I see those three in it. You've given the message, we've got the message, and now it's up to us to get it out there and to make sure that people know.
Well, we hope so. I mean, we hope we could have achieved that. You know, as documentary makers, I think the most important role for us is to tell stories from places that are misunderstood, or stories that people aren't familiar with. Certainly, I think myself and Garry aren't really that interested in going to tell the story of some place that we're all familiar with, that we know quite well. I don't think we add anything by going there. Our great strength is that we're prepared to access somewhere like this where not many people want to go to, but we're prepared to spend this amount of time on the ground, just with a desire to open people's eyes, to show them another side, to promote understanding, because when there's misunderstanding, it's very easy for people to project falsehoods onto someone like the Palestinians, and you see that happening time and time again through disingenuous politicians, and you see now currently the effect that has, and the really damaging effect it has on societies is far-reaching. And so if we can do anything to temper that, then I think it's extremely worthwhile.
It's a case of history being written by the victors. Isn't that really what it's about? And so you have a very powerful group of people who are able to write history, and this is what they're doing. And it's up to us to say, no, that's not it's about at all, and you've got the wrong end of the stick, and here's what's really going on. And that's what your film has done.
Well, look, to be honest with you, I mean, I've been making films for a long time, and Andrew's been doing some serious, brilliant work for a long time, but this project, above any other that I've ever done, it's not about us feeling great about what we've done at all. It's not about us being happy about a film. We're just... The happiest thing that me and Andrew saw tonight was a queue to the cinema. And it wasn't that they were going to come out and clap us on the back. It was that there was another 200 and something people going to experience what it's like to live in Gaza. And that fills us full of hope. The good thing about making a film, as opposed to other mediums, is that it will live on. It's not going to disappear ever. If in 20 years' time someone Googles Gaza, it will be a moment in time, a 4-year little moment in time, where it tells the story of a place and told by the people themselves. And there's nothing I'd hope for more than in 20 years' time, or even in less time, that they'd be looking back going, oh my God, look what it was like then. Thankfully, it's not like that anymore. There's freedom and people can do what they should be allowed to do, and that has gone away. But look, you do what you can, you put it out there. I remember a good friend of mine, Dermot Healy, God rest him. I did a film on him years ago, and he always said, I said, what does it feel like when you finish a book? And he goes, well, it feels like it's not mine anymore. And once it goes out, it becomes the public's book. It's theirs now. They can do whatever they want with it. They can like it, dislike it. They can throw it in the corner, or they can read it 10 times. But it's there. I put it there. I minded it. I nurtured it. I give birth to it, and now it's out there, and it's not mine anymore. And that's all I think that you can hope that happens, that we put it out there and people watch it.
The message, I certainly got the message, so I'm really grateful to you. Thanks a million for coming in.
Pleasure. Thank you. Absolutely lovely. Thanks for talking.
Yeah, not at all.
People from the outside countries, they can see other than the fact that we live in constant wars. And it bothers me so much. They only see the side they want to see. They should look deeper.